James is having strawberry, kiwi, and Mandarin coconut waffles. And I just put one package, this is 60 grams of coconut cream powder into the mix for 4 waffles, Belgian waffles. And I'm going to be reviewing Tammy Faye, the eyes of Tammy Faye, I guess. Orphin First Kill, Last Moment of Clarity, Spiral, and Fried Berry. And it looks like James is going to review some Hutterite stuff. And
Forgotten People.
Okay.
In German, and it might be the original German.
And I'm just having fruit. I'm having the same as James, just without the waffle. And less kiwi. Less orange. Anyway, the eyes of Tammy Faye.
Those eyes were something else in real life. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Eyes. Okay, it is the eyes.
Hands down, this got top of the stack. No, nothing came close to this. This was awesome. I didn't expect to like this movie, but wow, Jessica Chastain did an awesome job. I've never seen her do such a good job acting, and I actually like her as an actress pretty good.
You liked her before this,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
But this was amazing. And I never would have thought I could go into, or I guess come out of watching this movie thinking nice things about Tammy Faye, honestly. I was alive when all of that scandal was happening, and I remember it. It was on the TV all the time, and I guess probably in the magazines my grandma got too, or something. I don't know, but I just remember.
You remembered her voice? You were saying Chastain.
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. So it would have been on TV mostly that I remembered that. But anyway, I even back then I was just thinking, oh, what a couple con artists, you know, how not very Christian of them to live or whatever, right? But now, having watched this movie, I have a little more fondness towards Tammy Faye.
Not Jim Baker, though, I don't think.
Well, people are people.
Oh.
I don't know.
You probably feel sorry for him, but he still is a con artist.
Well, I mean, so is she.
Yeah, you're right.
She's an aggressive propagandist.
Yeah.
She's one of those look at me kind of people, you know, that, and I feel kind of sad for them too, that they need people to look at them. And, but, I mean, it's kind of like, it feels like with the look at me kind of people, the aggressive propagandists, it's kind of like a shell game, you know? It's like you're drawn to look at something to keep you away from looking at something else or whatever, and that's just it. It's
that might be what all artists are about.
Yeah. So as much as you might want to really care for somebody like this, you realize, well, you would really lose a lot, everything, if you did. They would just keep taking because they can't help it, I think it's just who they are, right? And anyway, but yeah, the movie, awesome. Everyone should watch this. And I didn't even know they have stuff at the end, you know, telling you whatever happened to whatever. I had no idea. So, great movie. Orphin First Kill. I was hesitant to put this at the top of the stack because it's about a girl who is physically stunted at age 10. So she looks like a little girl, but really she's 30 something or whatever, and she happens to be in a mental institute because she's really crazy and homicidal. Anyway, but I was not convinced that this girl was 10. I'm looking at her and I'm like, no, she looks like 30 something. She's just shorter, whatever. And they have her dressed up in little girl dresses, you know. But at the same time, the story actually, they did an all right job. It's genuinely scary, and it ends up, there's a twist. You don't know exactly, you really don't know what's coming up, and it comes up and whatever. So it got second in the stack, but it's way below Tammy Faye. So anyway, last moment of clarity. I like the ending.
How about what leads up to it?
Well, it's a bit of a mystery, but it works out in the end. Spiral. This one was pretty bad. It's I guess they're going for a sort of political message with this, and so it's set in different time periods than there. Anyway, I don't want to give it away. You might actually want to watch this movie. It's it has some good scary bits and whatever, and at the same time, it seemed pretty silly to me. I don't know. I really don't like the mixing up of politics with horror movie. Anyway, this one is your typical really bad horror movie where they mix up a lot of sex and horror, and it's just bad. It says on here a harder version of E.T. So it's just bad. Like there's one, I think it was the first sex scene you see with the alien guy or whatever. This guy. It's the woman pulls down her robe, and so you see her in her bra, and then she's on top of him, and you can see the top of her panties under the house coat. So I mean, she's making like they're having sex, but it's very obvious that they're not. And anyway, it's just, I don't know. And then there's a birth scene, because everyone thinks that birth is pretty horrific. Well, most people do. Birthing experience. Except, I suppose, people who work in medicine and are used to it, or veterinarians or something, whatever. I guess that would count as medicine. Or some women who want to feel like they're not a crime scene when they've given birth, or when they're about to give birth. I'm not sure. But pretty much everyone else thinks that birth is horrific. So that's in here. Yeah, it deserves the bottom of the stack. It's so bad. So I guess James is going to talk now about whatever he was going to talk about, and I'm going to eat some food. Sit in the sun.
So I was listening today to CBC in the morning. It wakes me up, gets my blood pressure up, so I don't have to worry about fainting. And a little bit ironic.
No, that's wet.
They were saying they let in, 300 more people from Afghanistan? And it's up to 30,000 let in the last year or so. And I was reminded of a fellow that I ran across here in the local mosque. the earlier version of it. Presumably not the earliest. Maybe the earliest. So I noticed this, I was walking by the mosque. I noticed this older guy, I wouldn't call him older, shoveling up the water by the mosque. And I noticed, I can't help it, I got 5 fractured vertebrae, that generally their walk wasn't long. And you kind of notice these things. You notice where people. So there were 2 louts over, kind of like supervising, overlooking this guy doing the walk. So I offered to help out with my 5 fractured vertebrae. These younger louts would have been in their 20s. And they really were looking askance at me for some reason or another. I don't know what their problem was. He was a nice guy. So I was chatting with the fella, the older guy, he's older than me, a little older. He was cleaning off the walk. I didn't tell him that those young louts should be doing it regularly to help people like me out. At any rate, the guy was dressed in something that looked a little bit like a kaftan. So kind of traditional garb of some description. I wish I knew exactly. Turns out the guy was from Afghanistan. Didn't have the greatest teeth, but he had some sort of an education. I don't know, university education. He hadn't worked in universities, I recall. So, something relatively high-tech here in Canada. I'm not sure if he was the right fit for Canada because his attitude was, he wasn't saying how he wanted to achieve it, but he wanted the whole world to get peace. And his recipe for it was what I'd consider a recipe, but not necessarily for the ultimate disaster, but some sort of disaster. For the whole world to convert to Islam. Now, the conversion in Islam is, well, that's what Islam means. It means, well, not conversion, it's a type of conversion. It's called, the best translation would be something in between submission and surrender. So, the peaceful version, it would be submission. Surrender is the not so peaceful version. It would be something that would involve something like pacification. So, there are lots of folks out there that are strutting around, Muslims and non-Muslims, strutting around saying that Islam means peace. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Right? Islam is derived from, as I recall, the Arabic verb, salama. Not sure where the accent comes from. Salama, salama. Salama, salama, salama. And what does that verb mean? It means something like to be peaceful. Right? To be peaceful. It means a lot of other things. In the Semitic languages, derivation is done a variety of different ways. By prefixation of M's or T's, just a consonant basically. By changing the vowels within syllables, that's strange. You could also get, feminines by adding T's to the end. Usually the T's aren't pronounced, as I recall. And so derivation is where you get a word derived from another word, and it will be oftentimes a different part of speech. So you can get a verb and change it into a noun. So let's look at peace. We get that word from Latin, pax, which originally would have been something like pacus, something like that. Probably more like pacus. And then we just got switched to one syllable, pax. And then from that we get words in English. They'd be pronounced more like Pacification. Let me see. Pacification. Pacificatio. Yeah. Pacificationis in the original Latin. And that would be pacification. So in that case, it's basically, it's not even changing the part of speech. You're going from a noun to a noun. And so that's derivation. Now, the important thing to point out about derivation is, the word doesn't mean the same thing, even in the root. Guaranteed, I can. But pacification, for example, and that's the example I use, does not, that's all caps, underlined, exclamation mark after, and yes, like the Spanish do, an exclamation mark before, not the same meaning as peace. Pacification does not mean the same thing as peace. It's kind of like the Romans would make a wasteland. This is ancient Romans, classical Rome, would make a wasteland and call it peace, but it really would be pacification. Pacification. Generally, when we use it, you can say, this is pacification when I give a kid a pacifier, but we don't say that. Oh, here, kid, here's some pacification. Pacification pretty well generally means some peace being imposed on someone by either by force or the threat of force. It's not done by peaceful means. So hopefully you understand that distinction. Just because something is derived, i.e. pacification, from the word peace, or the Latin word that means peace, doesn't mean it's peaceful. Got that straight? The way Semitic languages tend to work, there are exceptions, maybe a lot of them, but the way they tend to work is their words are derived from verbs. Salama. So what you do is you'll get a greeting. Salam. It's derived from salama. Something like basically meaning to be peaceful. Salam means peace. Peace beyond you, something like that. Peace. The Hebrews do the same thing, the Jews.
I don't know if the graphite's even going to come out of my housecoat now. Oh, I'm sorry.
You've done a lot of work, but yeah. Anyway, where were we?
Salama.
Yeah, shalom. Yeah, it's related. It's cognate. That's the term that is used with salam. Shalom. It means peace. And and that's nice. It's basically means the same thing, although it means peace. Like it's a formal thing. Like it's like saying hail, hello. What would that mean? Maybe hail to you or something like that. You're not really hailing someone, it's like hailing a cab or so on and so forth. So it's a pro forma kind of thing. It doesn't really mean, like peace, I'm worried about you, fella. That sort of stuff. You gotta be careful about derivation. Then you get Muslim. Muslims derive from salama, to be peaceful. See how it's got an M, as mentioned? Sometimes you add things at the end, but more like the beginning in the Semitic languages. The M seems to be one of the all-time favorites. Yeah, sometimes it's a T. And but more often it's or as much, it's shifting vowels around, shifting, and yeah, that's what you get with Islam. See how you got S, L, M in there? That's called a triliteral. Salama has it. SLM. And so does Islam. SLM. But what's happened with Islam is that is a derivation from salama. And it means something like submission or surrender. It doesn't mean peace. Could mean peace, but it's more likely you submit. Okay, that's what a slave does. And surrender is what a conquered person does, or a person who just doesn't want to be conquered. In other words, is surrendering to force, or the use of force, or the threat of force. Got that straight? Derive. So when people going around saying Islam means, because it's derived from salam, it means peace, they're lying. They're either lying to themselves, by extension lying to you, or just straight up, flat out lying to you. And you should know better. So when you get this Afghan guy, or when I get this Afghan guy talking to me saying, what he was saying was, the world will have peace when everyone surrenders or submits to Islam. He didn't use the word surrender or submit, but that's what he meant, convert. Okay. Now you look at the history of Islam, the 4 rightly guided successors to Muhammad. The history of Islam was anything but peaceful. Muhammad, the story goes, according to some Muslims, was poisoned by a Jewess. I suspect he was poisoned. I suspect it was his second successor. Successor is caliph. That's our mispronunciation of something like Khalifa in Arabic. Was poisoned by Omar, Muhammad's second successor. First was Abu Bakr, and I'm a little bit suspicious about how he died. Yes, he was would have been a fairly young guy when he died. Not sure though. But I think he died after a couple of years in his role as successor. And then you had Ali is not a good fate for him. I think the third successor was killed as well. So, like it was violent right from the beginning. Okay? Get that straight? Check out your history, please. Now, if it were peaceful, when the religion had dealings with other peaceful religions, ones that are by definition, pretty well, not definition, but from the beginning, the concept was peace, pacifism, Hutterites. Oh, you should, by an extension of definition, have peace, right? Okay, here's a list. Chronologie der Hutterischen Geschichte. Chronology of Hutterite history. Oh yeah. Schwere Plünderungen durch die Türken. Heavy plundering by the Turks. Muslims hammering down on Hutterites. It wasn't just fellow Christians who were hammering down on Hutterites, and the Hutterites kept a record here. Martertafel, table of the martyrs.
You want to come here?
They kept a list.
You want Jesus' food?
And that would be the martyrs taken by the fellow so-called Christians. But yes, that's 1605. That's a long time ago. Yeah. Yeah. You got to keep track of these things. There's got to be something like, in this case, it's not reconciliation, nor should it be for indigenous people here in Canada or the United States or anywhere in the New World. It shouldn't be reconciliation. It should just be conciliation. In other words, we did it, a recognition. We're sorry, and it won't happen again. Or in the case of many things, we're going to put a stop to it. Okay. 1605.
You really should.
Oh, but that wasn't the only time. Now, I've got to point out, they weren't in Turkey at that point in time. The Hutterites, I think, knew better than that. I'm trying to figure out where they were. Maybe Czechoslovakia. Okay, 1556. I'm going back. 1556 bis 1593. I'm not going to try to stumble over the dates in German. Bis means till in this case. It can mean a lot of different things. Before then, it says, ständige Verfolgung treibt die Martyrer in die Wälder and zwingt sie in Erdhöhlen to überwinden. Steady or continued persecution drives the martyrs, i.e. the Hutterites, into the woods and forces them to overwinter in caves. Or Erdhöhlen would be more like holes in the earth, dug in the earth, I presume. So that's followed by 1556. Die Gütenjahre zu einer Blüte des hutterischen Gemeindelebens wären, bis der Krieg zwischen den Habsburgern und Türken viele Brüderhöfe vernichtet. The good years, which leads to blossoming of the Hutterite community life until the war between the Habsburgs, those would be Christians, basically what ultimately ended up being the Austro-Hungarian Empire, or Austrian Empire, and the Turks, of course, that would be the Ottoman Empire, Muslims. Viele Bürgerhöfe vernichtet. So lots of brethren's communities were vernichtet means destroyed. The Turks as well. And the thing to understand, you won't want to understand it, is there's no separation of church and state, in the sense that there's no real Muslim church, but there's no separation of religion and state in Islam. As you get to a certain degree, even with the Greek Orthodox or Eastern Orthodox Church, to a greater degree with the Western Orthodox Church, which we know as the Roman Catholic Church, and to a much, much greater degree with the many, many different churches of Protestantism. And so when the Ottoman Empire is carrying out its depredations against poor, pretty well innocent Hutterites, military depredations, that's the church doing it, or the religion doing it. Get that straight? Got that straight? Keep it straight. And don't go around, well, you can fool yourselves, but don't start flapping your gums trying to fool other people.
There you go.
Do some reading. And then apply whatever little brains you got between your ears to that reading. Enough said.